In the tunnel.
In the tunnel.
In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel, episode number 112.
Yep.
We got a few things we want to jump into regarding some stuff that happened over the past few days and some stuff that's been happening for a while.
Yes.
So let's get into it.
Yes.
We're starting with the NHL. And I guess we'll kick it off with the
The
All-Star
new skills format.
Weekend. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were somebody who went into watching the skills competition without any idea of that there was a new format, like me, it certainly was something. I mean,
It was
the
something, all right.
NHL. I mean, the NBA does it too, but the NHL, I feel like more does this thing where they just can't sit still. They can't choose a format and just kind of stick with it. This need to constantly change things. And I understand that older formats are kind of more just like you get what you get because they're participating and you just like throw everybody out on the ice. But they tried to incentivize it this year with $1 million prize for whoever won, you know, the overall competition with it being off of a points-based system, so every event was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Except for I guess in some instances where somebody got half a point, which I still don't understand, but watching the one was a Kucherov who had point 0.5 points for the whole time. Um,
I mean, you also
um,
have the last event, which I think it was like 10,
those
8.
double
Yeah,
points.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it kind of takes on the same style as it used to, where we still have fastest skater, we still have a bunch of different skills competitions, but they tried to make it competition based. The problem is with all stars is that most all stars are kind of in the tax bracket of $1 million. I mean, in the NHL, like the highest earning NHL player gets like 12 and a half a year or
Yeah, I think
something.
it's like 13th
So
now,
like,
but yeah.
yeah, so it's still 1/13th, which is not a horrible percentage, but that'd be like if the NBA kind of was like, "Oh, all these guys were making 25 million a year, let's give them $500,000."
But I mean,
Like,
okay, the thing is, right, if you have like the Kucherovs and them who are making more, right? Like over like, 8, 9, 10 million up to 12 and a half, 13, right?
mhm,
If like I really feel like a prize pool only exists to work when somebody who's an underdog is there.
right. When John Scott is there, the $1 million means more. Um, because those are guys, not necessarily a guy who has to fringe be out of the league, but a guy who is making league minimum, a guy
Not
who is
even league
making less than
min.
a million. Yeah, well, like a guy on 725,
Yeah.
or like let's call under 3 mil a year. You
Or
know,
even just like, yeah, okay, under 3 mil a year, but some guy who's maybe on their first contract or had just like an explosive season. You didn't really,
like if Kel McCarr was in his second year
yeah,
on his ELO,
yeah, you'll see.
whatever, the band ELO.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had a few things go on, right? So
Right.
you,
And so the the downside of this new format was if you and we were texting about this, if you're a casual hockey fan or if you're a diehard fan of like 16 teams of the NHL, your team basically had no role in
Yep.
this skills competition.
I
So
mean,
imagine if you're a Ducks fan and you fly to Toronto because this is like the big thing. You know that the All-Star game is kind of plain, but this is like your dunk contest. This is you want to see creativity,
yeah.
style, kind of stuff like that. Nobody on the Ducks was anywhere near
But
this night.
let's take it a step further, right? Okay, you had three Canucks, two Avalanche, two Maple Leafs, two Oilers, a Bruin, and a Lightning, and a Devil.
Yeah.
What
Well,
the
no,
hell? We're
Jack Hughes didn't end up doing it.
yeah. Yeah. He had injured, right? So he got replaced anyway.
Right. That's where yeah. I guess the fan vote probably would have been one of them, but JT Miller and Quinn Hughes being the two. And so this is interesting because like it would have been nice to see some of these guys like
I mean,
Elias Pettersson doesn't scream like the limelight to me
but I
compared
mean
to David
also
Pastrnak.
I feel like okay, if you let's go back for a second and look at these events, right? Instead of combining it for what 10 people, whatever it was, right?
Right.
Uh, if you had something where it was like previously, where you had some people, some players compete in their events, right? You would have had such a better parity in terms of team distribution, and also maybe that prize money would have meant something to one of them.
Right. But the other side of that is that if it was like a team joint effort or something like that, because remember
Yeah.
they did that with the Metro and the Pacific. Oh, you know, they did the teams of four for the past few years, and then it's like, well, once you divide it up like 12 ways, it basically is just like 80 grand,
Yep.
and so it doesn't mean as much.
But I
Um,
mean, like, yeah. I mean, the number for the prize money is a moot point anyway. But yeah.
yes, but that's where it's the NHL. Like
Hmm.
the NHL is the one league where it's like, all we can scrape together is 1 million. They probably could do more, but
Yeah.
they're just uh, we don't really know how much afloat the NHL is.
Uh, they gotta be doing okay.
They have to be doing okay, but at the same time, they're adding more jersey patches per year.
Yeah, because it makes more money. Regardless of how
Right,
much
but
money
is that
they're
because they
making
don't
more.
have money, or
No,
is it
like, I mean,
based
they
on
can always
need,
make
or is it based
more.
on want?
Yeah. All right.
Let's not
Well,
act like a local credit union is paying 5 million to them for fucking jerseys either.
no. All right. All right. Well, let's get to talking to about specifically one player.
Yes, the effort man himself,
He.
Nikita Kucherov, and this is the issue with doing this and incentivizing it because, like, who's going to say no to? Well, I guess a lot of people could in sports say no to this, but the idea was incentivize effort, incentivize competition, and this guy got an invite that he probably should have just said no to.
Yep. I mean, oh
He
god, like watching that was
and he
I
was
was
happy about pissing everybody off.
I was
I
laughing.
understand
I
that
don't know about you.
Toronto and Tampa are like somewhat rivals in that they're in the same division, but this seemed like he really, I don't know if he was in the pockets of the sports books because you could bet on the skills competition. I
Yeah.
don't know if he was, but for me, this is weird because Toronto Maple Leafs games are such a business crowd anyway,
Mhm.
so it's hard to envision that it was too different for the skills competition that night. Um, but for those where it wasn't and it was like pure joy of hockey, this was like the biggest slap in the
Oh
face.
yeah, I
Like
was laughing, but that was more like I can't believe he's actually doing this.
I can't believe that after like the seventh time he got booed, he didn't fucking like kick it into gear like 20% more. He actually like slowed down more. So like
Yeah,
I don't know. If the All-Star game ever came to Pittsburgh and for whatever reason I had tickets to it, like the skills competition, like
oh yeah. First of all, I
truth be
probably,
told, I would be boxed out for tickets. Like there's no way I'm on the list of people who cares enough to like
I
spend
mean,
$1,000 to go.
I,
Um,
I mean, like, I feel like if I was going to an All Star event, it would be just like the games on the next day. Like the NHL changes the All Star like skills part so often that I just wouldn't know what to expect.
so I mean, look, if it were me and I had the opportunity to go, and this is like that if it's in your city, it's a once in 30, 40 year chance to go.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna give it to better cities most of the time. And if there and the quality of show that I'm getting is that, I would be annoyed.
Oh
I
yeah.
would be extremely pissed off. And it's kind of no different than last year when they took the whole fucking show and put it in the hands of guys who very clearly the celebrities who, and I use the term celebrities loosely, do not know really much about hockey.
Yep.
Like they're scraping at Justin Bieber for as much as they can because they know that that's the one name that brings prominence to hockey outside of hockey circles. And so, like, I'll say this: the skills competition overall was better than last year because they put the power back in the players' hands. But if you're only going to let guys in that are going to give that kind of effort like Kucherov did, you might as well just shut down the whole fucking thing. Because
Yeah.
like th- people, there's always going to be more hockey fans than can fit in the arena for this kind of thing. Like people watch it because it is the NHL's equivalent of the NBA skills challenges, but like so it's never not going to be a sellout event,
Uh-huh.
but it's lacking quality if that's the trend it's going towards.
Yeah.
And that part I don't think is funny, especially like if you're a little kid and knowing that your parents are making a sacrifice to take you to this thing. And like when you're a little kid, this is the most you have the goggles on that allow you to be enamored by everything that's going on with hockey.
Yep.
And that's the image that gets put out in front of you is kind of like you a little kid probably doesn't know, but like the parent of the kid knows like the experience kind of got tainted a little bit.
Yeah. All right, well, on to the other major NHL news of the hour, I
Other
guess.
than the fact that the Canucks somehow like got a fifth All Star in because they had Demko, Pedersen, JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, and then made an 11th hour trade to get Elias Lindholm.
Yeah. Oh my
You're
god,
you're
bro.
taking the lead on this one, by the way. Yeah, by the way, five All Stars on one team is like the most I've ever seen
Yeah,
since
and
the NHL changed formats to division.
the thing is, right? Changing formats to division was supposed to reduce the number of all-stars per team.
Right,
So,
they basically capped out the rosters at 10.
half of them are freaking Canucks.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing great this year, but like that's still a lot.
All right. Well, the other news in the NHL is the case that's been going on for a while is finally resulting in charges. You got two Devils players, a Flame, uh, a Flyer, and I think a Senator. They all had to go back to Canada so they could get charged. Uh, there is various things being said about it right now. It's still a sensitive topic, so we want to be careful. But like,
Yeah, so we're going to set a little bit of a hazard warning before this that like this is all anything we say is based on speculation of not knowing what is fact and fiction. Um, we're not going to imply that anything is fake, unfortunate, anything like that. Like we understand the magnitude of the situation. We both have our own thoughts about the credibility of this, given that it is in relation to five current NHL players and as well as other former NHL players that are not being discussed on the surface. Um,
yeah, there's like this is from World Juniors for Team Canada. A couple, it's been
2018.
5 6 years right now, and so there's a lot of implications to this. And
Yeah,
again, they five players all took okay, so the weird thing is they all took leave of absences for mental health at the same time, and they all showed up to Canada to get charged. And all of them are saying something along the lines of it's they're not guilty.
denying. Yeah, but at the same time, this kind of got kick-started from the fact that one of the former NHL players in Canada just decided to voluntarily turn himself in, and so that's what kind of allowed the ball to get rolling on this, I guess,
Yeah.
is one person coming forward and saying that they were responsible, but now five are saying that they were not there,
No, no, they're not
or,
saying that they were not
or
there.
not,
They're saying
or,
that they're
right,
not
not
guilty.
involved. My
Yeah.
apologies. So this is weird. I guess the scenario at play, or not the scenario, but the situation at play, was that a woman was went into a bar, was kind of more or less courted by one of the people in the bar, and was either forcibly but or not forcibly taken to a hotel room. At which point, the report is saying that in that hotel room stood not only these five hockey players, but basically a group of 20, was it, people?
Yeah, it was almost the entire team, I think, but not exactly the entire team.
Yeah, so this is where it gets dicey, is like, and again, I am going to predicate this by saying I'm just speaking in terms of logic and not um, anything else. The idea that you could get 20 teenagers in the same room seems a little
I
far-fetched to
mean,
me.
the thing is, from other stories we've heard about in the junior hockey scene in Canada, I am not super skeptical that you can get a lot of people. The number obviously like 20 seems high, but like if you were saying it looked like 20 and it was actually like 15 to 18, sure, maybe with other things that we heard that are potentially done in the junior hockey scene in the past.
Like, I'm not saying none of this is credible. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
saying, is there a degree of exaggeration to it? And I'm not even speaking in terms of world juniors. I'm just speaking in terms of teenage.
Yeah, but
boys.
I'm
Like
speaking
the
from
amount of adrenaline that's there, they're all, we've both been in that situation before. It or you're kind of all over the place at that age in the idea that 20 people just were committed to one activity that wasn't on the ice
yeah,
is
but I
interesting.
mean, like I agree that from the outside, if you're not looking at this, it could like there's a lot of speculation and like is this like the truth, right? Like obviously, but at the same time, like what we've heard or a lot of inklings have been coming from the Canada junior scene about similar situations, not at this scale, I will say, but definitely similar types of situations.
Yeah.
So I it's all again like we're this is a big thing, right? Like you have five NHL players who just left their teams, and we'll see. I think now that they are charged, or they will be on Monday, um, they will have the possibility of getting suspended from the team instead of just on leave with pay. Oh, by the way, they're all getting paid right
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah. I mean, the thing here, just to clarify, my problem, I don't even have a problem with anything that's being said. It's just, I, and because I'm clarifying this again, just because this is as sensitive a subject as this is, um, I am solely focusing on number of people in a hotel. I am going to absolutely lay down and say, doesn't matter how many people were in a hotel room, the woman felt uncomfortable in the hotel room. She felt uncomfortable. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. I'm just purely questioning the semantic detail of like 20 in a hotel room. Like
fair,
we've all been in hotel rooms. Can a hotel room actually support 20?
fair.
Stuff like that. That's where I question things. I think that there is a lot of credibility in things. Just saying, is there exaggeration as well?
Yeah. So yeah, that's an ongoing thing though. So we just wanted to touch on it. It's a big thing, and nothing is set in stone until all that plays out, which could take like another 2 years. So yeah,
Well, to kind of lighten the mood, Carter Hart probably wasn't going to be in the NHL for 2 more years anyway.
eh,
Way he's been playing.
we'll see. All right, on to the NFL. Yeah, so there's only one thing left to talk about for the NFL.
Yeah, the Super Bowl, the NFL playoffs that took away all the fun storylines early.
Yeah,
Um, and then the Detroit Lions thing, which like we can talk about the takes on the Lions game, but you know, this is, I guess, an interesting rematch of, well, was it 20? No, it was 2019, the year before COVID,
hmm
um, where the 49ers had the chance to put it away and then didn't. Um, it's weird to me because Kansas City far and away does not have the offensive ability to do what they did 4 years ago. But for whatever reason, nobody could fucking figure out how to stop them this year either. Um, I'm rooting for the 49ers. I think that they have the better roster on everything except for like their kicker. I think Bucker's better than Jake Moody, but I don't know. This
I
feels
mean,
weird to me. Like,
I'm pretty sure there's a huge portion of NFL fans who just doesn't want to see Casey win.
and as well as the other side, which is the bump that has come in from the Taylor Swift shit,
Mm-hmm.
which is like it's getting harder to ignore at this point that this is becoming more the storyline than the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When sports books are saying, is Travis Kelsey going to propose should they win the Super Bowl as an actual bet, then we're starting to lose control.
Yeah.
And, this was all fun and games early on, but then they took away, what's his name, the commentator who does Sunday Night Football most of the time, Al Michaels. They took away Al Michaels from playoff broadcast because he basically made a plea behind closed doors that he wasn't going to keep showing Taylor Swift on the broadcast. He wasn't going to stand for it. And so they took him off the broadcasts, which seems a little irrational. Uh, and so it's kind of hard to look at this and think that anything outside of what the narrative is going to happen.
Yep.
Sucks because like if you're a 49ers fan, like knowing in your heart of hearts deep down that your season is basically just a toy for somebody else's media hype is really fucking shitty.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if Travis Kelsey retires, then because what, he's in his mid 30s too, and he walks into the sunset with Taylor Swift, the Kansas City Chiefs keep a trophy based off of Taylor Swift's name, and nobody else fucking says a word. And it's just kind of like, all right, I guess we all go back to football now, and nothing means anything. Despite the fact that this whole season is being overwritten by the presence of one person, which,
Yep.
you know, to me is insane. I have my girlfriend telling me, oh, if the Steelers run into the Chiefs in the playoffs, I don't know who to root for. You're fucking from here. What do you mean you don't know who
Hello?
to root for?
Hello? No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, it's not. And the fact that every Dick's Sporting Goods in Pittsburgh is selling a Kelsey shirt now is like uh, the need to capitalize on sales. Like,
Oh my
it's the
god.
NFL. Like, literally, churches get out before noon so you can watch an NFL game at 1.
Yep.
You don't have to buy into selling more product every fucking time. Um, so yeah, I'm rooting for the 49ers even though I didn't want to. And I can't speak for you, but like that's
I-
that's just where I sit.
I'm rooting for the 49ers well as well, so where we are, so yeah.
This
Um
is almost as good as when my coworkers and I, when we all flew down to Tampa, and of course in the workforce today, every team has their resident Swifty. Um, so one of ours is a manager, and I decided to stand at one end of the table. She stood at the other, and I debated the insanity of that relationship with her until my voice gave in the middle of a Tampa bar.
oh my
Um,
god.
and I was my coworkers just standing there laughing because I was the one who decided to die on the
The
sword.
die on the hill.
It was like that was the best part of my 2022 or 2023, I should say. Um, to do it in Tampa, Florida. That's exactly where I drew it up. In a place where I
Alright.
knew that I couldn't give a shit.
Alright, moving on. We
Yeah,
have some.
the other side of so we touched on it in a prior episode of Jim Harbaugh, what was he going to do? The sign stealing thing, stuff like that.
Yep.
Um, and then it kind of became evident as time went on. Once the Big Ten investigated it, but the NCAA hasn't yet, it was kind of like there's going to be some impos- uh, self imposed or NCAA imposed infractions and bans
Yep.
for Michigan football incoming, and the only way to protect the program was for Harbaugh to leave.
Yep.
And so, I mean, he was in a position of just won a championship. He was in a position of very in demand, and so the Chargers are it. Which this is the best case scenario for the Chargers because
Definitely.
they absolutely need a coach like that who establishes toughness on both sides of the ball,
Hmm.
whereas whatever mediocrity they brought in was only good at one or the other. The thing here is that um, college coaches tend to bring a certain way of thinking to
I
things.
mean, for me, it's more so that college coaches are inherently very coaching in college versus coaching in the NFL is inherently very different, right? So when a
Right, one's
college
in more
coach
of a position of power.
transitions, it is a very fine line they have to walk to figure out how to move to coaching in the NFL.
Right. The good news is that Harbaugh's done it before with the 49ers.
Yeah.
The bad news is that he was more successful, even though he was very successful with the 49ers. He's had he brought Michigan to um an era of dominance that they were not in
Hmm.
for 30 years for being able to get over a hump that they were not able to get over and then get everything else out of it.
Right.
So, it's not that he can't survive as a coach in the NFL. It's just he was able to go back and basically wring everything out of that sponge.
Hmm.
And was it so successful that he is going to try the same thing at the NFL level?
Right. All right. Anyway, so yeah, he uh apparently he has sent text messages to most of the players on the Chargers.
Yes,
Uh
especially those he's excited to work with, which is like, of course, Justin Herbert, stuff like that. Um, the downside is, in theory, or not in theory, in the rumor, if you didn't get a text message, you're basically on the chopping block, which speaks to some players like Mike Williams.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I'll like if I were Harbaugh, would I really have texted every single player on the Chargers roster?
I don't know.
I
Mario Lemieux never didn't.
I wouldn't. I would be like, hey, I'd probably like reach out to the major players on each side, right? So like you got your key set of offensive players who lead them, and you got your key set of defensive players, and just reach out to them and say like, hey, can't wait to work with the team. Then you don't get all this controversy, especially because like if you're just reaching out to like the key players, whatever, you'll talk to everybody else later.
The thing about this though, to me, is like we live in an era of technological resources being very plentiful. And we just went through a pandemic era where everything can be managed through a Zoom call or Teams call, whatever. And how easy would it have been to get somebody in the organization to send a text to everybody on the roster to be like, look out on your email. We're going to have an introductory meeting with your new head coach. Everybody be on it. Where Harbaugh could have said this all himself. Like when Deion Sanders left Jackson State and went to Colorado, within 72 hours, and granted they're on a college campus, so they're all in the same place anyway, within 72 hours, he had the whole team in the building for a meeting. Now,
Hmm.
it's different in the NFL. Everybody lives all over the world in the off season, but
Right.
the thinking that he couldn't connect with everybody in one way or another seems a little off to me. It seems like he's choosing who he wants to talk to, which, yeah, it empowers those of status who are,
Right, but what I'm
Justin
saying
Herbert,
is
stuff like that.
you
But it,
either what I'm saying is you either go get on a, get on a Zoom or send like a mass text to the entire team, and then you can send other texts to other players if you want, or you only just send text to like a few key players on each side of the ball. You don't do this kind of like 50-50 where you're sending text to every single player that you basically care about.
right. But like for me, I guess I'm saying is like you're empowering some, but you're not empowering all. And by not empowering all, what you're doing in spirituality is saying you're not important enough to empower. And then you do damage instead of
But
good.
that's why I'm saying like you like he could have handled this in a completely different way that would have still worked, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's the part I agree with you on. I'm just saying, like, and granted, like, Harpo never doesn't seem like the most, I thought this out kind of person. Otherwise, he probably would still be in Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, but this just seems weird. Like, that he goes to the Chargers, and I think it's a great opportunity for him because he's kind of like, yeah, the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, but you're potentially catching them on the tail end of their dynastic run.
Hmm.
And, within 2 to 3 years, the Chargers could swoop in and just like take over. Um, but I'm not exactly sure that this was the best tone setter.
No, I agree. All I'm saying is he could have handled it differently. I don't try to read into much of what's going on. So
Right, well, I do. So,
yeah. All right, on to the NBA, the other sport going through an All-Star event recently.
yes, the other sport that generates way more interest, way more followers, but yet we focus on the NHL because that's what we know better.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Well, you have the two rosters for the West and the East. This is game is in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
next weekend, I think.
No,
That's normally when it is the second weekend of February.
but the problem is the second weekend of February is the Super Bowl, so they're not going to do something, right?
Oh, shoot. All right. Interesting.
Right. So it should be the
Yeah, I mean, it does say February 18th around the graphic. That's how out of the loop I am, I guess. All
man.
right. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, on the West, you have James as the captain of the team, who is surprised, right? You have Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, and I can't even try to pronounce that last name. Uh, you want to go at it?
Gilgeous Alexander.
Gilgis Alexander is the name.
Yeah, for
Oh,
OKC.
okay, cool. And then
SGA.
yeah, and then on the East you have Antetokounmpo, Embiid, Lillard, Tatum, and Halliburton.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you surprised that like out of at least the starters, I'm not really surprised. Um,
Okay.
oh, you want to go through the reserve players, I guess, and anyone
Yeah,
you're
I mean, so like first of all, we do have to take a second after this to address the fact that I did not put in the slide because it was a couple weeks old at this point. And the fact that the Indianapolis airport just put a full basketball court in the airport and how
yes,
viral that went.
yes, that
So
is another
let,
thing.
let's put that on the docket of things that we need to address. So in the West we have Devin Booker, Stephen Curry, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Karl Anthony Towns. I have no problem with this for the most part. I think that like the Warriors will always have Steph in the conversation, and I think that maybe out of the Western reserves, Steph, people are not going to like me for saying this, is probably like the most on the fence.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
because like the Warriors are on a down year,
Hmm.
but like Clay and Draymond have dropped off so much as like if they were to have one representative, it would have been Curry.
Yeah.
And I guess in this era, people just aren't ready. Like this is the same thing of like we all know how Shaq basically got voted into the All Star game every year, even the years where like he could barely fucking walk until he signed with Boston and retired like a year in
Hmm.
and was playing like 10 minutes a game.
Yep.
But there are NBA stars who just have such an international reach that they will make the All-Star game until like the year they retire.
Yeah.
Um and I think that Curry's in that boat. I personally have a vendetta against Anthony Davis making any All-Star appearances because I think he's too fragile to be there. And plus, the Lakers are kind of like in free fall right now. So for
Yeah.
them to have two All-Stars, like I feel you need to reward winning more than losing, and having them have two All-Stars just kind of
Yeah, but
seems like a
like
bit
at the end
much.
of the day, the NBA All Star Game is just a popularity contest, in my opinion.
Well, it is for voting in the starters, but the coaches are the ones who uh, vote in reserves,
Okay.
which is the big difference. Which I think when we look at the East, like a guy like Paolo Banchero, like the Magic, they started hot and they've cooled off a little bit, but they're still over 500. So for a team like the Magic, who haven't been above 500 really fighting for anything outside of like the eighth seed for like 12 years now,
Mm-hmm.
they deserve somebody. They absolutely do.
Okay.
Um, I do think that the Heat having Adebayo is perfectly fine, even though like they're kind of on the outside right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks deserved too. I think that Randall's going to get replaced by Trey Young, but like the difference with the NBA All-Star format now is that um I don't know injury replacements if it's based on conference or not, or if it's just the overall roster. So, like, if somebody gets hurt in the East, can they add somebody who plays in the West because it's going to be captain drafted?
Mm.
So that's what we have to find out. Um, Donovan Mitchell's there for the Cavs. Tyrese Maxey is joining Joel Embiid with absolutely. I mean, he's more than replaced James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I don't really have this year. I feel like there's snubs most years, but I feel like this year it's kind of hard to leave certain guys off. And my maybe most outrageous take is that I think of all the guys who were named All Stars, Stephen Curry is like the least deserving.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like
Yeah. Mm, that's
I
fine.
think that yeah. Yeah, the Pacers absolutely needed somebody, and it because they're like they're starting to kick it into a higher gear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, this is certainly interesting. Um, and then yeah, let's take a minute to discuss the basketball court. Even though we don't have a slide for it, they were smart. They put a full scale basketball court in the Indianapolis airport, and you know,
There's no
of course,
basketball.
the internet. Well, one, there's no basketball. Two, have you ever been? You ever remember when you would go to like Walmart or something like that as a kid, and you could just grab a ball out of the little bin
Yeah.
and you could shoot because like they hadn't figured out like okay, put a lid on top of the rims. Okay, so nobody took a picture of the baskets having a lid on the
Yeah.
rims in the airport.
Uh-huh.
So people did bite the bullet. They flew to Indianapolis.
With a
Uh
basketball.
yeah, and then kind of yeah. But it was great for gaining traction and popularity. I saw
Right.
tweets of people being like, I'm gonna go to jail for yelling open shooter in the airport and it's not actually going to get me in trouble this time. Like people were saying like it would be incredible if like there was just a pickup game
Mm-hmm.
while you know like oh there's a delay on my flight I'm gonna get a couple pickup games in. Like this was something that actually made going to the airport sounds way more entertaining to the point where people were buying tickets to see a basketball court.
Yeah.
And so I think if anything, because we know airports are huge, I think airports need to start putting in gyms. Like if you had a 10 a.m. flight and you went to the airport at 5 a.m., you avoid all rush hour traffic, everything like that, get pick up basketball game in before you get to your gate. Yes, you have to put it on the other side of TSA. Like you absolutely do.
Yeah.
Like you can't have, you know, what the Indianapolis airport did where they put it basically by the check-in kiosks
Yeah.
because like people do not want to go through security twice for a pickup basketball game.
Yeah.
But like the airport is such a beautiful place in the sense that like it's full of people you'll never see again.
Yeah.
And people who are going 100 different places a day. And for like 20 minutes in a game to 21, you feel like you're not alone. And then everybody just goes on their way. It's kind of poetic in a sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Part of me was like, how far is Indianapolis from here? Like if I saw videos of people like actually getting pickup games in, I'd spend $100 to make it happen.
Fair.
I would make a 3-day trip out of Indianapolis, so I wouldn't be like, oh, some of these people were like, I checked a basketball in my carry-on, and then like it went through TSA. I got to the airport, and then like I have a return flight in like 2 hours. I couldn't do that. Like you have to get your money's worth. But
All right. Well, the other thing that I would say is fairly surprising, I guess.
yeah, Doc Rivers back in the league, despite the fact that he really didn't need to be.
No, but also it's the team that he's back in the league with,
Yes. So do
Milwaukee.
you want to set the narrative on this or
No, go ahead.
okay.
I'm still more like, what the hell?
So Milwaukee being I guess in the turmoil that they are being the second best team in the East, um they decide our defense isn't very good. We got rid of Drew Holiday. We got rid of the players who defensively anchored our team. We're not getting the message across to be better on defense. So even though we have the second best record in the East, let's fire our head coach who's had the job for 2.5 months. Um, doesn't really make sense.
Not at all,
On
bro. I looked at this and I was like, what is Milwaukee doing?
on top of that, rumors come out that Doc Rivers, who was fired by Philly last year, um, is basically taking on a consultant type role without being on the staff, dating back to the in-season tournament, the thing
Yeah.
that only 4 teams get to the semifinals of, and the Bucks did. So again, not like they were failing at that either,
Nope.
but Doc Rivers all of a sudden becomes this voice in the organization's ear and in the players' ear, despite the fact that, again, the Bucks were doing fine.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so ridiculous.
and so they decide players not buying into playing good defense be damned. It has to be the fault of the coach who has been here for
2.5 months.
5 minutes compared to the players who, outside of Damian Lillard, the better players have been there for like 6 years.
Yeah.
So for sure, it's not the players being complacent. Let's get this coach who has historically not won anything outside of when Rondo, KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen worked perfectly for 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year.
So now enters Doc Rivers, and the expectation becomes what?
I don't know.
Because we now have a big enough sample size that Doc Rivers largely cannot get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Not even to like conference finals level.
Yep.
And so is the expectation now that Milwaukee takes a back seat? Probably not.
I don't
Um,
know. But yeah, like this is just like I read this and I was just like, what? Like, why now? Of all times? Like, your team is actually doing good. What facilitates the need for this type of change, right?
right. And the only other time that we've really seen this happen in the past 20 years is when LeBron decided that David Blatt was not the right coach. That was when Tyronn Lue took over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the Cavs were the number one team in the East when that happened.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
there's a
so this is
quite clear
interesting.
difference between that and this, right?
Right. There
The
wasn't a voice in the ear.
Yeah, and a very very important voice making that statement, right? Like
Right.
LeBron is always the loudest in the room because he is what's generating the most traffic to your team, basically. So
In the NBA.
yeah, and so you're going to listen to him. So that one makes a lot more sense than this does.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't make sense, but it does
Yeah.
because that's what the NBA is.
Hmm.
The thing about it is the mixed public persona of the team towards Adrian Griffin.
Hmm.
Like they all said that they loved him. They all, pleaded that they have to play harder defense throughout the season. And the first game that Doc Rivers is coaching, they're all in lockstep dancing arm in arm in the pregame circle like they just exercised a demon. Um, and then continue to lose.
Yep.
So this is certainly an interesting one.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. It seems like outside of their record, Milwaukee's window is closing rapidly.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Um, sorry.
Anyway, yeah, so let's take a look at the standings, right? So we have, just as we were saying, right? Milwaukee is second, right now, right,
Drank
Dave?
seltzer. I'm so sorry.
Huh?
I drank seltzer. I'm so sorry.
Anyway, Boston's at the top. They have 37 and 12. Like, that
Yeah,
they're
and
quite
even
clearly the
they are
best.
kind of right, and even they are kind of like cause for concern, which
Hmm.
is weird. Now, the NBA in today's landscape is like nobody, like the Kobe Shaq Lakers were so dynamic because they did everything so great.
Yeah, but
And
that's
there have been
also
super teams that are on the offensive and defensive side of the ball very, very, very good at doing everything. There just isn't a team like that anymore.
Yeah, but also like Kobe and Shaq did two different things for that team, and it just worked well together.
Right, but like the idea that Shaq was a fucking defensive like superstar, He just wasn't.
No, but they did two different roles for that team that meshed well together.
Yes, they did. Um, and
Anyway,
supplemental pieces basically rounded them in a way that
yep,
kind of perfected their roster. But now with the game being what it is, it's just so hard for defensive talent to shine.
yep,
It's just so outpowered by offense that defense is basically like on the cusp of making the NBA, but not in it.
yeah. Yeah, anyway, so you have New York in third right now, followed by Cleveland, Philly, and Indiana.
Yes, and I hate the Knicks just because like they're a legacy of failure in their own right.
Yep.
But kudos to them because whoever the fuck scouted on Jalen Brunson,
Mm-hmm.
because he was nothing in Dallas until his last year,
Mm-hmm.
they fucking aced that thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's no guy who has played with a more determined style than him. And
Yeah.
to do it for the Knicks is like changing the narrative completely for their team.
Yeah. And
Um,
the only other notable thing is Detroit has 6 wins on this list.
yeah, and I was actually talking to friends about this, like the downfall of Monty Williams,
Yeah.
who in the 2020 or no 2019 he spurned LeBron. LeBron wanted him to coach the Lakers
Mm-hmm.
and to take over that. He spurned the Lakers to become the coach of the Suns, takes the Suns to the bubble, has the 8-0 run, um, and basically blossoms them into a finals appearance. Next year, best record in the league,
Mm-hmm.
and 1 year later, new owner, hey, you're not getting it done. And basically within a 5-year window, this guy went from he's the best coach in the NBA.
To this.
LeBron wants him to. He can't even get anything out of the plentiful amount of first round picks in Detroit
Yeah.
to the point where they are losing more games than they did before Monty Williams was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Monty Williams in videos now is like, well, why didn't you guys play Jaden Ivey more? We honestly haven't even come to the conclusion that we could try it. There's only 12 guys on the team. Try something. You guys are 6-42.
Yeah.
What do you mean you didn't come to the conclusion to try something else? The team drafted this guy 5th overall last year.
Yep.
So there's something wild going on with the downfall of that coach.
Yeah. Anyway, we have the
We have
other half
the
of the
Nets
NBA.
who are reportedly rejecting any and all trades for anybody,
Yep.
despite the fact that they're 19 and 28. They were offered 2 first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith. They said no. Dorian Finney-Smith is worth 1 first-round pick. They said no to 2. They have on several occasions turned down 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. I guess the rumor is they're heavily protected first-round picks, but 5 of them. The Nets have a roster full of guys who are perfect supplemental pieces. Their starting 5 is all like guys who would be second or third scorers on another team.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they're just saying like we're not going to rebuild. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And Ben Simmons still doesn't want to play because he came back after missing 2 months, played 1 game, and he's hurt again.
Anyway, so yeah, on the western side, we have Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Los Angeles, the Clippers at least.
Yeah, so Oklahoma City still the feel good in that you know they have absolutely run with it. I guess
Mm-hmm.
they have developed all these guys are like young enough to still be playing college ball, so they have a coach who has implemented basically a college basketball type system,
Mm-hmm.
and it's working great. And it's probably built more for the playoffs because it emphasizes, defensive help and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And Minnesota is phenomenal as well. They've really taken a jump forward. Um, but we'll find out what Minnesota can actually do in the playoffs. I
definitely.
like this is where the NBA is like regular season just doesn't mean as much.
Uh-huh.
Um, so like if you're as long as you're in the first six seeds, like that's all that really matters. As long as you can assure yourself the 7 game series. Um, I don't know, like the Lakers, we went through this last year. They're on the outside looking in the sense that they're probably going to make the play-in at this rate, but
Yeah,
uh, we talked about this last year. They're somehow attached in rumors to everybody of significance, despite the fact
but they're
they have no win.
always going to be attached in rumors because of who's playing there.
Yes, but again, if you thought that they had no assets last year, they have less this year.
Yeah.
So what are they trading?
Yeah, don't
You know,
matter.
all the guys that they brought in at the trade deadline last year turned out to be dog shit this year,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're like, well, maybe we can get rid of them and acquire this, guy who would really help us. And it's like, well, yeah, but what teams want dog shit? Like every time you let your dog out and it takes a shit, there's not a line of people being like, hey, can I pick that up for you?
Yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of
Anyway,
where it is.
yeah. Anyway, that's what we got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Um, you know, Sean decided to burst my bubble because I was really in the headspace of like I'm going to have 2 straight weekends of like I'm going to watch the NHL Stars Skills competition this weekend, and then next weekend I'll watch probably the worst dunk contest of all time. Um,
you
and it
gotta wait an
turns
extra
out
week.
that I have to wait an extra week, which I mean, with my girlfriend normally goes on a ski trip, and like the NBA All Star Weekend is like a good way to pass the time when you have nobody to like spend time with but yourself. And now it turns out that they took that away from me. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's coming up to March, so maybe we do another March thing.
oh yeah, maybe we'll actually finish the bracket this time.
Yeah.
I'll have to. I don't even know. We don't have a license to the software anymore because I got fired from Pitt. Um, all right, I guess we're gonna have to torrent it.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next